So, not long ago, I had this panic attack. Um, yeah, it's like panic attack. Two words that don't really do the experience justice. It's like the worst pain I've ever experienced in my life. But, it sort of made me realize something about the ego. The ego would rather... The ego is more afraid of its own death than the death of your body. And like the ego will gladly sacrifice your own body in order to preserve it, if it's too out of control and powerful and, too well cultivated, and you've trained it and associated your sense of self more strongly with, the ego than, with your body and with your soul. And so, making a decision that would force the ego to be humiliated and sort of, the veil taken off of the ego, and now, all you see is what you actually are, which would essentially mean that the ego is now dead. The ego will fight you to the death and sacrifice you and your body on the altar of it, even though, once the body ceases to be, it would cease to be, but it would rather have the body die than the being within the body to realize its true nature. Because taking off the veil would mean that you no longer identify yourself with the ego. And, the ego is everything that, it tries to attach itself to everything and get you to believe, the superficial story about whatever it is that you're looking at. And, that's sort of like, the ego, where the ego exists, but the ego doesn't really exist. It's merely a veil, and the veil serves a function, but it doesn't serve necessarily always a healthy function when it's out of balance. And so, the ego isn't really evil, but it's sort of like something, it's like a muscle that has been overly well developed, and it becomes destructive because we associate our survival and our sense of self with it. And, when we have to make a decision that challenges the ego and, is sort of like humiliating and embarrassing for us, that, often the ego will fight to not make that decision in order to preserve itself, because it believes falsely that its survival depends on maintaining a certain appearance. But, once you take that appearance away, the ego is afraid, oh shit, I'm going to die. And then, your physical body suffers because you've basically convinced yourself into a situation where now you're like, oh fuck, my survival is at stake. When, in reality, it's only your self-image, essentially, that is at stake. But if you detach from your the weight that you've put on your self-image, then you have nothing to fear, you know. And that's a difficult thing to do because we live in a world filled with external values that come from external sources, and to cross these ethics from the world, from other people, literally sometimes means that our survival is at risk. But also, our status, our reputation, all these things, these are all things that we try to maintain, and we really have linked our survival so very strongly to these ideas, and have made ourselves attached to the world and become slaves to our reputations, essentially. And so I can kind of see like why a monk would choose to go and live in the wilderness, because in the wilderness you don't have that particular issue. But I don't think that's the only path to detaching from the ego, because a lot of decisions that we make that we think is going to be what other people expect of us is in reality something from the past that worked then, but now it no longer serves us. And so like we've sort of put a lot of weight on maintaining appearances that aren't even really necessary anymore, or that no one really is asking for us to do. And usually we underestimate how little of a fuck most people give about us. It's like you disappoint someone, they throw a tantrum, they cry a lot, they get upset, but then they get over it and they forget about you. So we're not as important as we think we are in the way that we think we are. But anyhow, so I just kind of wanted to put that out there, like that the ego will sacrifice the body before it will sacrifice itself. It would rather have the body die than it die, even though because the ego is stupid, it doesn't realize, well, once the body's gone, it's gone. So anyhow, I'll leave it here.